just be in the background. Let me know that you have just joined me and where you're joining me from. Good morning, Chidima. It's good to have you. If you're joining me on YouTube, have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Our YouTube channel is that place where you get a lot of resources that you can use in your parenting journey. So if you're on YouTube, why don't you go ahead and hit the subscribe button and remember to click on the notification button so every time we go live you are notified and you can join us live so that you can get it hot as it is. If you are on Facebook, do you have a friend who needs to be here right now? Do you have someone that you need to invite to be a part of what we're doing here right now? Go ahead and invite them. Yes, Chidima is joining us from Orlando. Where are you joining me from? And if you're catching the replay, let us know that you are here also, and let us know if you have got or you are getting value from this session. I guarantee you that you will get value for this session. Before I continue, let me start by saying a big, big, big thank you to everyone who celebrated me on my birthday. Some of you were here with, it was a lot. It was prayers, it was birthday wishes. Some of you made cards for me. Some of you, people went out of their way. It was honor in multiple ways. The gifts, the calls, everything I do not take for granted. So thank you, everyone. I may not have responded to your greetings or your well wishes yet, but I promise you I will respond to every one of them. Okay, I will respond to them one by one. I sent in a general thank you, and all of that, but I'll respond to them one by one. Okay. So if you have not gotten any response from me, I did come. I will be responding to you soon. All right, let's jump into what we are here for today. The Skill Up Show is that show where we come and we share skills that you can apply in your parenting, straight up skills that you can just take and apply and begin to work with your children on. Now, these skills are skills that if you can hang in there, if you can apply these skills consistently, you will begin to see results. I promise you. If you can hang in there, you will begin to see results as you apply the skills. The problem we have most times as parents is inconsistency. Inconsistency has done a lot to most of us on our parenting journey. You are consistent for a bit. One day you're doing it, the next day you're not doing it, another day you're doing something different. The next time while you do that, the child is confused. Children get confused. The brain is confused. It doesn't know what to remind the child of, right? So when when the child is having a similar experience, there isn't a concrete thing to help remind the child that this is the way it's supposed to be, because the child has got multiple ways the child has got multiple approach or whatever to read, basically modeled to the child. So one minute the child is doing it the proper way. The next minute the child is doing it anyhow. Another minute the child is not even doing it at all, because hey, the child did it one way and it was fine for you. The next time he didn't do anything at all, and that was fine by you. Another time the child wanted to do it, you were not even interested. So you see, when you do this, the children do not know what exactly the expectation is. So that's why consistency is very key on this journey. Today we are looking at why you cannot parent the same way, why you must educate your child differently. All right, why must we educate our children differently? Why do we need to educate our children differently? Or why am I saying you can't educate your children the same way that we were educated? The value of education is much more than we give it. I tell you, okay, that's a personal opinion. I think that the value that we place on education, right? The value that we place on education is much more than what it should be, or the value we place on it is a lot less than what it is actually supposed to be. Okay, there is so much more to education than what we try to make education seem like. Education is much more than a couple of letters and numbers written on a piece of paper as a report at the end of a term or the end of a semester. A report or Education is much more than those grades. Education is much more than those numbers that we see on that paper. Okay, now some of us as parents over the years have become, we have blinded ourselves, or we have reduced the expectations of education to the grades and what comes on that report sheet. Now, that is why you will see a child go to school. This child may not have made any progress psychologically. This child may not have made any progress socially or emotionally. Okay, this child may be even too young for the class where the child is, or the child may be unhappy where the child is. But the thing for us as parents, the only feedback where we draw the fact that our children are doing well or that our children are fine is from the fact that they are making good results. So we've reduced education to a couple of numbers and, numbers and letters that are written on a sheet of paper. Education is much more than this. Chidima says, Matthew chapter 9 verse 16 says that no man putteth a piece of new cloth onto old garments, for that which is put in to fill it up taketh from the garment, and the rent is made worse. Neither do men put new wine on, exactly. Why? Neither do men put new wine on, I can't see these glasses here. So basically, Chima is trying to quote the scripture that says you can't put the new in the old. It will give way, right? Because, of course, the potency can't be the same. Thank you very much, ma'am, for that, for that submission. So yes, just as scripture says, you cannot take the old or the new and put it in the old. Somehow it may not hold it. So yes, there is a need for revamping what education means to us. There is a need for revamping the kind of education that we're giving our children today. I wrote a post this morning and I said, education is much more than the fact that we are changing the way that it's much more than moving out the blackboard and bringing in the whiteboard where you can use a marker. It's much more than exchanging the white chalk for the black marker. It's much more than our children writing on slates or writing with pencils being replaced with palmtops and all the tops that we use today. There is much more. Education is much more than that. It's more about the mindset. It's more about the approach to education, and it's more about the outcome that is expected from education. Now, what are the outcome? What are the educational or the objectives of our education today? So when a child goes to school, what change are we hoping to create in that child? When we send a child to school, when we give our children education, what are we expecting? What outcomes are we expecting from that education? If the mindset is not changing, if the ideology is not changing, if our expectations are not changing, then we will not get anything different from what we have today, or even worse than what we have today. Now we go around, we move around, or when we have conversations as millennials, right? When we have conversations as people from Generation X and millennials, most of us who are here today are from Generation X, or we are millennials, right? Now, it is often, you will always hear in our conversation how children of today are so messed up. Our conversation is always about how children, Gen Z, Gen Zers, the Gen Z generation, how the children are this and how the children are that. These are the kind of conversations you have when you have a bunch of parents together and we're trying to compare what we have in the past and what we have today. Now, the submission is always that this set of children are not anything that we were like. This set of children, basically trying to say that the children that we have today are worse than what we were. Now, the thing that gets me laughing every time this conversation comes up, or when I hear parents having this conversation, is the fact that we tend to remove ourselves from the outcome that we see in those children. Does it occur to us that these are the product of the kind of education that we received? If we're raising children who cannot think, if we're raising children who, I mean, as we indicate or from our conversations, we're raising children who are lazy. That's how we put it. We're raising children who are lazy, children who are not ready to think, children who are self-centered, children who are entitled. These are the kind of children who are highly distracted, children who are not committed to their commitment. Now, these are the kind of children we are raising. Now, we always tend to remove ourselves from these dynamics. We forget that what you get is what you have produced. We have forgotten that we are the minders, we are the caregivers, we are the guardians, we are the teachers, we are the people who are raising this group of people. So it simply means that by virtue of how we were educated, by virtue of the kind of education that we were given, the product of our education is what we see today. So the Gen Z that you are complaining about, these disrespectful children, these entitled children, these lazy children, these distracted children, these children that we have today are a product of how we were educated, are a product of our outcome. They are the product of who we are. So it simply means that there is something that is faulty with our education or the way that we were educated if we cannot produce people that are like we. I mean, we say we're all that, then we should be able to produce, replicate ourselves, right? Now, if we are unable to replicate ourselves and we cannot even do a better job than our parents did, but instead we are churning out children who are much worse than we are, then it means that there is something wrong in the way that we were raised, or there's something wrong in the way that, in what we're producing, right? So it is what you were taught that you would do. You cannot give what you do not have. So yes, your parents raised you. However, I'm not even going to have that conversation or go there. However, they raised you, whatever style of parenting they used to raise you, is definitely the way you're raising your children. You cannot give what you do not have, except, of course, you get to a point where you are learning. And for you to learn differently and to do differently, it's because you can see that what you had or what you were given is not good enough. That's the only reason you will want to unlearn what you have, isn't it? That's the only reason I am unlearning what I was given, okay? That's the only reason I am doing differently, because I have been able to go on a journey where I can look at how I was raised. I can look at my childhood. I can look at the outcomes. I can look at the traumas that I have. I can look at all of this and I can say, okay, you know something, I want to do differently because I want to raise someone who is different. And because of that, I am able to, do certain things because I have the end in mind, right? I have the end in mind. And so I have created a plan that can help me alter some of the things that, are the outcomes of how I was raised, so that I can raise people who are better than I am. But a lot of us believe that we turned out well. A lot of us believe that we are product of good upbringing. So if you were a product of good upbringing, why are you raising children who cannot meet the standard that you were given? So no, if you're raising children who are meeting the standard, it means that the way you were raised has got some faults in it, because hey, it is helping you churn out children who are not up to par or who are not up to standard, children that you are constantly gathering and bickering about, complaining about, and all of that. So it simply means that if we don't revisit the way that we're educating our children, and I like to use the word education because for me, education isn't just what happens in the classroom. Education is the total reformation of a human being. Okay, the education is a total reformation of a human being. It's the transformation of a human being from someone who knew nothing to someone who knows something now based on how that person has been educated. So yes, education is not just the classroom for me, it's everything. And as parents, I believe that we are our children's first and most important teachers. So as far as education is concerned, you have the biggest job to do with your children as far as education is concerned. Remember that the first 6 years of your child's life is the period of programming. Most of what your children are going to be for the rest of your life, all that programming, all the foundation, all the skills that your children have, everything, most of it was determined in the first 6 years of their lives. Yes, that's when most of them took their root. That's where you have most of the window period for skills in the life of your children. So yes, that time was a time that your child was meant to have been with you. In fact, that's the time that your child was with you more than your child was with any other person. If you did anything less, if your child was with you less, then you have shortchanged that child for a lifetime. Now, that is why you are one of those that should show up in this Skill Up show every day. That is why you should be one of those that's constantly seeking what they can do to support their children, to help them unlearn most of the mess that they would have learned in the first 6 years of their lives. So let's move. So yes, we have established the fact that if we were so amazing, if we were raised so greatly, if the template we were given was so amazing, then we will have a Generation Z that we are proud of. We will have a Generation Z that we are pouring accolades on, and we're not complaining as much as we are. But if we're complaining, not just in Africa, if we're complaining from every part of the world, then it simply means that there's something wrong with how we were raised in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. Because, hey, we are millennials, and millennials are people who are birthed by the boomers and the Generation X. So it means that there's something about how millennials, Generation X, and the boomers raise children that is not right. So we would have to do differently if we're going to raise a generation that is better. We'll have to do differently if we do not want to complain about the next generation. These are the children that were born between 2010 and today, the ones we call the Alpha generation. If we do not stop and retrace our steps, if you and I do not start making the effort, carrying this gospel, sharing this gospel, refusing to be put down by those who have refused to allow our voices be heard, if you cower in the face of those who frown their faces and roll their eyes at you, if you refuse to share the message that you have, the knowledge that you have, if you cower in the face of your friends and people around you who laugh at the fact that you think that you can do anything different, then we're going to have a generation that we will complain about. When you're done complaining about your teenager and your young adults, then you start complaining about your 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds, because your only work is to churn out people that you complain about all the time. How we manage to exonerate ourselves in all of this is what I will never understand. I will never understand it. Albert Einstein said, okay, Albert Einstein's educational philosophy emphasizes that ideas and solutions can come not only from logical and systematic thought, but they can also come from through imagination and out of the box kind of thinking. So it simply means that if we're going to raise people, who can make a difference, who can create solutions, who can solve problems, then it doesn't necessarily have to be in structured environments. It doesn't always have to be through some logical kind of thinking. It means that we will be raising people who we can give the freedom to think outside the box. We'll be raising people that we can give the opportunity to allow their imagination run wide. Now, if you're going to raise people whose imagination can run wide, if you're going to raise people who can think outside the box, then you cannot box them in by stopping their instincts. You cannot box them in by being a stumbling block in their ability to be free in their thoughts, in their exploration, in discovering the world. Now, as parents, what do we do a lot of the time? We stop our children in the track while they're trying to discover the world. We are constantly saying, stop that, get out of there, will you go there, will you sit well, will you sit a certain way, will you stand a certain way, will you do it this way? We want to instruct our children just the way our parents instruct instructed us. We want to make them sit a particular way, the way our parents made us sit. We want them to talk a particular way, the way our parents made. We want them, in fact, we want to see them and we don't want to hear them because, hey, they don't talk when so we want to do the same thing we were done to. We want to see. Have you gone to those classrooms? You even go to the classrooms, the way they are sitting, the sitting arrangement is the rote way that you and I were taught. It's amazing how you go to a classroom and you see the classroom still looks the way your class looked. I mean, have you tried visiting the school where you went to 10, 20 years ago? You will walk in there, apart from the fact that maybe the alumni association has come to change the what do you call it, the desk and chairs, to a more modern thing. Maybe they've taken out the blackboard and they fixed in a whiteboard. Every other thing in that school remains the same sitting arrangement, the same kind of chairs. They probably will change the material or change the wood, but it's the same kind of sitting arrangement. Everything the same. The children still do the same thing. The modus operandi is the same, and you want to raise children who are different. If you go there, if you try, you will even see some of the teachers that you had when you were there. They are still the same ones, or the ones that are trained and they still act the same way as your teachers from back then. And yet we say we want to raise people who are different. No, we're not going to be able to raise people who are different if we don't begin to make changes to the way, that is different from the way we were raised and all of that. Okay? Now, the present world as we have it is suffering from the kind of education that we were offered as millennials. Yes. And as I said, we have been raised by the generation before us, right? We were raised by the boomers and people from Generation Z. Now we are raising the Gen Zers and we're raising the Alpha generation. If we're going to make them better, if their lives are going to be different from the kind of life that we have, then we have to do differently. Okay, so what can we see amongst our Gen Zer? You should be asking yourself this question. What do we see amongst them? Okay, how were we even raised? Let's look at some of those things, okay? Let's look at some of the things or some of the ways or some of the things that happen to us that we must look at and change right away, okay? We were raised to see tribe. Look at us. Let's be as realistic as we can be. Look at how we were raised. We were raised to see tribe. We were raised to see race. We were raised to see our faith. We were raised to see where we're coming. Just that. So it was along those lines. Your parents, in their conversations, because of the war and what happened to us during the war, for those of us from the north, from the Southeast, right? From those from the Southeast, in the conversations that your parents have, there is a constant reminder of what happened to you because, during the war. When the Hausa man is having conversation, I remember back then, I was teaching in a school and my colleague had a situation in her class that I couldn't wrap around my head. Gradually, without even understanding it, she noticed that the children in her class, every time there were birthdays for children, right, she notices certain people will not take the gifts and the food. You know how it is during birthdays, you bring all the goodies and all of that. She noticed that when a certain people were having birthdays and things like that, a certain group of people would say thank you. No. As you're passing the things around, they'll be like, no. It took a while before she realized that right there in her classroom of just about 25 children, there was actually sections. So the Muslim kids will not take food when it's a Christian child that is having a birthday. Just like that. The Muslim kids will not take food when it's a Christian child that is having. So before we knew it, there was what you call it, there was religious biases right there in the classroom of kids who were 8-year-olds. 8-year-olds. Why are we talking far? Did the election not just happen to us? Those of us, if you're watching us from diaspora or you're not from Nigeria, sorry, I'm using the Nigerian experience, so just come with us, okay? So the elections just happened. And what happened at the tail end of the elections? What did the politicians, why are we saying the politicians? What did politicians do to us? Are we not human beings? Are we not adults, educated people, quote and unquote? What did the election turn to? It turned to a tribal war. It turned to a religious war. I mean, we don't see anything yet. We don't see anything anymore. When you see a human being, the only thing that is about at the back of your mind, that is how we were raised. This is what our parents did to us. They raised us to see our tribes. So that's why when you come home with a man, the first thing your parent asks is, where is he from? Then the next thing, oh, everything is okay. Oh, he is from this denomination. So because of that, you cannot associate. He is not, he doesn't go to our kind of church. So we were raised. So these are the things, and this is what's been passed on to us. So even as parents, even as a millennial parent, some of you are already warming up. You're already warming up to have people only from a certain tribe, people from only from a certain race, people only from a. Do you understand? That's why you step into a nation and it becomes clear to you what race you belong to. So basically, I mean, I'm not saying these things have not always been there, but what I'm saying is never has it been so profound or never has it been so pronounced as it is in our generation. So yes, we have been raised to view people. We have been raised to see each other on the lines of our religion, our religion, our tribes, our race, and all of that. So yes, that's the kind of children that we are raising. We're raising children who see themselves as this and that. Some of us, I mean, growing up, it was even so bad. Growing up, it wasn't even so bad. The people who raised us didn't even make it as bad as we are making it today. So that's why they say, you know, my children will be better than I. Is that not what we all say? We say I will raise children who are better than I. So it's the same thing. So you were raised with those things at the back of your mind. And what have you done? We have multiplied it. Because I went to school and on Fridays, we went to the assembly and we went to, we said it and we had fun and everybody went away. It didn't matter whether it was Christmas or New Year. I didn't even know my classmates who were Christians. It was not an issue. We had fun. I used to go with my neighbors back then. We just walk into the mosque and we sit down there. And, you know, basically, what am I saying? The innocence and that dichotomy was not so, it wasn't that glaring. I don't know. So, yes, somehow, you know, our parents must have paid attention to it or made emphasis on it for us to carry it the way we carry it today, that we have enlarged it so much that our children cannot even see themselves outside those lines. So if we don't begin to go back and change some of these things, what we will hand over to these children will be such that you will have to stay in a position, in a fixed place and go nowhere else. Because if you move to the left or move to the right, you'll probably be smoked by virtue of the fact that you are from a tribe, not from a tribe, and all of that. This is how much we have reduced life to. We were raised to think in a logical and systematic way. That's what our education is like. You're supposed to come to the class. You're supposed to, why am I going far? Lord, before I left active teaching, the last time I was in a school, okay, one of the reasons why I packed my bag, hung it, and left, and have not gone back to a proper school, right, to take a job again was because, you know, okay, there are other issues, but what I started understanding, I started getting certain reactions that I did not understand where they were coming from. I will not bore you with all of that. I didn't understand where it was coming from until I started hearing gists. Okay, I started hearing people talk. Some people had to talk to me about whatever. And what did I hear? I had left. I had gone off for a bit, and the children were supposed to have a science fair. Okay, so my colleague and I had agreed that we're going to focus on 3 types of practicals. So for the science fair, the children can choose or join the groups of this. And then I had a couple of the kids come in. I know I used to have a Chinese child that was just amazing. So she came in and she said, Miss Marybeth, can I do a different experiment? I have something in mind. I'm like, share with me. And she shared with me and the idea was so amazing. I'm like, why not? Go ahead. And then another child came and said he wanted to do something different, provided it was within still around what we were teaching them. I'm like, that's fine. And so these children went ahead. Okay, sorry, let me do a bit of housekeeping. Just give me a minute now. Now, these children went ahead, and so these kids went ahead and they started preparing for their own project, different from what every other person is doing. And so I was not around, and all that had to happen. So my colleagues was another of my colleagues had to take over my class. And she did not find it funny. Oh, Miss Marybeth and her trouble. She is too much. She's too extra. We agreed on 3 experiments. Why are the children doing something else? It's so much stress. That was a problem, that I allowed children to stretch their wings and fly. That I refused to box a child to do only that one experiment that teacher said the child should do. And so this is the reason your child is expressive. Your child is that child that is expressive and assertive. And all the teachers in school will clamp on that child and will give your child no breathing space because the child is extra. This is the reason children are not allowed to try their own ideas, to explore. They're supposed to, it has to be a particular way. This is the reason someone will tell you, oh, you need to lock the door like this, or lock the thing and do the thing this exact way. The day you don't do it that way, trouble. Whether the result is the same thing, or even if the result is better, no, you have to do it this particular way. So because of the way our education is such that children are not allowed to think outside the box, it's supposed to be, I mean, there are some teachers that will mark you down simply because you did not use the same method that they taught you. So you see, no teacher, I mean, a lot of times, if you meet the wrong teacher, wrong teacher doesn't want to think of anything else. You didn't do it the way he gave it to you because he cannot even figure how you arrived at your answer because you're doing it in a way that he does not know, he does not understand. So it's a lot of craziness. This is how we're raising children. This is how a lot of us were raised. Number 3, we're raised to obey and not question. And so we are pointed, because we're children who were raised to obey. This is how it's supposed to be. Those of you who I mean, the children that are talking, the children that are trying to say, I mean, trying to object, are the ones that you're constantly telling you, talk too much, ITK, shut up your mouth, go away from here, you know too much, and all of that. So we're constantly shutting them down. You're constantly shutting them down. And when you shut children down like that, what happens? You kill their instincts. So you kill their natural instincts to explore. Remember, they were created to explore. They were created to be. They were created to figure out these things on their own. But because we don't want children who are extra. We don't want those who are trying to figure things out on their own. We want the ones who are obedient, the ones. So that's why the quiet child, quote and unquote, that's why the quiet child who comes into school, does his business. One second. So that's why the quiet child who comes into school, faces his work, does his business, gets high grades, is termed a good child. Yes. So that child that is quiet in class, doesn't make noise, doesn't talk too much. When the work comes, he does it, he passes it well, and is termed the good child. And so that becomes a model for every child. So your boisterous child, your child who is curious, your child who wants to explore, your child who is kinesthetic, wants to explore, wants to touch things, is tactile, is forced to see this phlegmatic or this melancholic child who is an audio visual learner who can just look and listen and is fine. Your kinesthetic child is forced to see this child who is the teacher's model as the good child. So the teacher is constantly using this one as an example. Is constantly asking everybody to be this person. How is it possible that you have a class of 30 children and they are all supposed to be like Amaka, the good girl? So you see how we're boxing children up, and this is what happened to a lot of us. That's why we had the children in the class who were the teacher's favorites. They were the ones who marked the books. They were the ones who marked the book. They will mark your own book. I mean, your classmates are marking your book because you're supposed to be smart and all that cool. And all. They were the ones who marked the book. They were the ones they were the ones who were given all the responsibilities. They were the ones who were allowed to try. You were all supposed to emulate and become like this child, all the boxing. This is the way we don't want to raise children today. We raised children, and so because it was about instruction and doing it this particular way, that's how we raised a generation of people who wanted to just come out and earn white collar jobs. So yes, we're all raised to graduate and get jobs as bankers, as engineers, as ministry workers, and all of that. We were all raised to work in places where we can follow instructions and we can get other people to do all the creating, okay? Because of course we were shouted down at. Our instincts were killed. We're not allowed to explore. We're not allowed to touch. Don't go out. You will fall. This one will happen. That will happen. Don't touch this. Keep that thing down. Don't put a finger. You don't go there. This is not for children. We were all this, and so your child doesn't get to understand the world around him. Remember that when the child is born, it's tabula rasa, nothing there. It's how the child explores his environment that the child begins to understand the environment. You cannot instruct a child. You should not instruct a child about his environment. The child is supposed to interact with the environment to know the environment. That's why if you pick the right approach to education, listen to Montessori, listen to Charlotte Mason, listen to all the great people who carved out what education should be like. I believe that education is one of those visions that have been hijacked and made a mess of. This is a personal belief. I think it's one of those ideas or vision that people have hijacked and they've made a mess of the vision of the true founders of education. True founders of education created education such that we're supposed to explore our environment and get our knowledge from our environment. Children are supposed to learn in natural environments. They're supposed to explore and discover the world on their own. You are supposed to be their support. You're supposed to just guide them and help them reinforce. But no, we have taken we take the center stage and we instruct. So we want to say, sit down. When you sit down, I'm going to explain to you what a plane is. You don't need to see a plane. A plane is, so we explain to them, grass. I will explain to you what a grass is as opposed to go out there, interact with the grass and find out what the grass is. Now, this is the kind of, so that's why we grew up not wanting to create anything. We grew up creating nothing, and we wonder why we are like this as a society. We're like this as a society because our natural instincts were stifled, were stopped, all the screaming, all the shouting and all of that, all the shame when you fail. Yes, the shame when you fail. You're not allowed to fail. You were punished every time you fail. You were punished every time you make mistakes. You were so what do? Instead of being punished, don't try. That is how the child's brain tells him or helps him survive. So every time the child wants to try, every time he wants to try, his subconscious mind tells him, don't try, don't do anything. Remember the time you tried and you failed. What happened? You were punished. You were beaten. So what? Don't try. So that's our children we are not creating solutions. We are afraid. Those of us who were shouted at the most, those of us who got the most basketballs are the ones that are even afraid to try anything. Because we're afraid of failure. You were made to think and to know that failure was a bad thing. So rather than fail, you would rather not try. So that's what happened. So that's why we are the ones who say we are the most intelligent group of people in the world, yet we are the ones that create nothing. And you know why that is? It is because other people do things with ease. We try too hard. So yes, your child will graduate from Nigeria and we get admission and go to the US or go to the UK, and he will come out with a distinction. He will come out with absolutely amazing results. Yes, because he's the one that is trying 10 times more. So the next person or his competitor or his colleague, his friend from China, is just doing what he has to do. He doesn't have to try 10 times because he's not about the grades. It's not exactly about the grades, and it's not exactly about how he looks to anybody. He is just Sorry, I just had a power cut. Who is there to help me? Okay, so while he is there, his colleague or his contemporaries from other part of the world are simply just living the life and doing what they have to do with ease. He is trying too hard. He's doing 10 times more. Why? That is how we were raised. We were raised to read in the morning, the afternoon, in the night, power for power, and all that. And provided at the end of the day, we are handed a report that says a distinction. We make the phone call home. After all, that is the outcome that our parents expect. After all, that is the learning objective for us. Our learning objective is that you come out with good grades. Our learning objective is that you come out with the A's. And so the child is just waiting to get the A's so that he can send the message home that he has the A's and everybody is happy. While you are there, the emotional trouble that you went through, all the psychological issues, all the moral decadence, whatever could have happened, provided the grades show good, every other thing doesn't matter. Because, hey, the learning objective for us is to come out with those grades. All right, we do not teach our children nothing about financial sense. Our financial sense is zero. So, yes, you have your child, you're 10, 12, 14, 15, your 16-year-old, your 17-year-old in his final year in secondary school has never made a dime of his own. That child has never, every money that he boasts of is a pocket money or something that his favorite uncle has given to him, or something that it has to be something that someone has given to him. So your child is 16 and is looking in the eyes of people when they come around, waiting for what they will hand down to him. Yes, we're raising these children. We're raising them to be people who will come and either create solutions, who will come and start businesses, or who will come and work to be paid money. Yes, we don't think there is a reason for them to interact with money. We don't think that there is a reason for them to learn the skills that will help them make, manage, and multiply money. Some of us even have, some of us have heritage that, we inheritance that we have stored up for our children. Scripture says we should store up inheritance for our children. So some of us are there building businesses. We are there stealing the ones that we want to steal. We are there amassing wealth and all of that. Meanwhile, the people that we plan to leave this wealth with, we are here giving them no financial knowledge. They just come, pack their bag. It's time to go to school. You count the cash, you hand to them. They go there. You're 17, your 18-year-old is calling you, Daddy, please send me airtime. Mommy, please send me credit. Daddy, I want to buy something. They are there, even to gift their girlfriends. They will call you. And then when you send, they are there collecting from you. Your child is in school. Your child is 22 years old. Your child is 23 years old in the university. Your child is still calling you, Daddy, 2,000, Daddy, 10,000. All your child's creativity is put into scheming to obtain more money from you. Basically, you are your child's ATM machine, basically. So, and then if you ask us, we are raising children who will come and impact the world. We're raising children who will come and make a difference. We're raising children who will come and earn money, yet they know nothing. Some people, the first time they heard anything about making money or trying to make money is after NYSC. You know those skill people, those people who come for skill acquisition during NYSC, and then they make all of us who cramp into a room. Then they'll come, they teach you how to make soap. They teach all the hypocritical ways that we churn out education in this part of the world. Is just, it's laughable. It's something to laugh at, really. We're so hypocritical about how we deliver this education or whatever it is. Even personal development, it's so crazy. It's the reason you go to offices and it's time to go for training, and people are thinking of how to get their names on the list just because they will get extra codes, just because of the money that will come. So you go for the training, and your only business is when is the time for tea break. You do the tea break. The next one is when is lunch. Half the time you are sleeping. In fact, I hear that some people, they even go abroad and they spend the time for the training shopping around. They don't even sit down to the training. It's a mindset. This is how we've been raised. It's a mindset. It's the way we've been raised and all of that. All right. So the final one is, we don't raise children to think of themselves as change makers. We don't raise children to think of themselves as part of the solution or part of the problem, especially in Africa. That is the reason we are here, insulting one government after the other. You insult this person, you insult that person. I said to someone the other day, if you walk into the ministries, you will find out that these politicians, they don't even know the job. Politicians don't know the job. Your husbands, your wives, your sisters, your brothers, your parents, they are worse than the politicians. Walk into those parastatals, walk into the ministries and see them. Some of them go to work to go and share the thing that is in the office. I'm sure you hear them. Our children listen to us. They hear us. They hear us going one time. I mean, you better get a job in the government office. Apart from the small salaries that come, there is always one thing that you are sharing. What are they sharing? They are sharing when they give contracts. When they give contracts to people who are sweating and running their businesses, they overprice the contract, and these people have to come and pay them first. And you think the government is the problem. Your dads, your fathers, your mothers, your brothers, your sisters in the ministry, your uncles, they are worse than these politicians. So yes, we can pray for all the government, whoever the person is. They will still come in. They will still come in, and the system will still be messed up, or we will still suffer until we decide to start educating our children differently. After we have finished educating ourselves differently, we have changed our mindset, and we're ready for the change that we are pretending that we want, because we are really a very pretentious kind of people. So that's why you go to NYSC camp, you go to all of these places. One person will go and bring his brother or his sister to come and get a contract to come and teach coppers. As you are teaching them, you know that the learning outcome is not right. So why the coppers are even there, they can't wait for you to just get out so that they can go and hang out, because they take nothing from that whole training. Yet millions of naira have been put into that contract. So you see, our system is the problem. Our system is really the problem. And it begins right from home. How are you educating your child at home? Are you educating your children to see themselves as problem solvers? Are you educating your children to see themselves as people of impact? Are you saying to your 10-year-old, what can you do today that can impact the world? Are you putting your children on platforms where your children can begin to impact each other? When we started raising the mastermind, and when we started the mastermind program is a peer mentorship and accountability program that we have for children between the ages of 6 and 14. Now, what's the mastermind about? The mastermind is about raising children who can direct themselves, children who can set goals for themselves, put their minds to those goals and begin to achieve those goals. And in that program, we do leadership also. As these children begin to self-direct, we begin to ask them questions. What do you and impact other people? And so